Bringing you the rigs, the trucks, the laboratories, and offices, this is the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast with your host, Ryan Ray.
Welcome to another edition of the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ray, and this is the show where you get to connect with oil and gas contractors from upstream, midstream, downstream, all parts of the industry. If you or your company would like to be on the show, be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn, which will be linked in the show notes. Finally, this show is brought to you by R2 Global. For more information, go to GoR2.com. That's GOR2.com. Today we have on Chris Henschen, who is a talent acquisition specialist at Atwell. Chris, how is it going today, sir?
Hey, how you doing today? I'm doing very well, thanks.
Okay, so Atwell, let's start off that. Who is Atwell? Where are you guys at, and what do you guys do exactly?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we're headquartered in Southfield, Michigan, sir. We're a national consulting, engineering, and construction services firm, and we work in the oil and gas, power and energy, and land development sections. Okay,
and that's a broad area. That's a broad area that you guys cover. Kind of give us a quick, 15-second or 50,000-foot view, if you will, history of kind of where you guys maybe started at and how you got to cover such a vast area today.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we've been in business for quite a few years at this point, and ever so slowly, we just decided to start growing the company and growing the industries that we hit in. I focus on the oil and gas section of the company, but we, our owners made the decision to make the push and keep the company growing, and that's kind of just how we ended up where we are today.
Sure. Now, as we mentioned in the beginning, we talk upstream, midstream, and downstream. Do you guys service all three streams, if you will, of the industry, or do you have a focus inside of oil and gas?
Yeah. So we do E&P, midstream, and transmission and distribution. We don't touch downstream.
Okay. Yeah. That downstream's can be tricky for consulting, engineering, and land surveying services. It seems like location based sometimes is more of an indicator of whether you can work in that part of the industry or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's start kind of with E&P. First off, obviously our listeners would know what that term means, but where do you guys fit into the E&P part of the business? Are you doing seismic? Are you doing well stakings, permits? Where are you guys at in that exactly?
Yeah. We do well staking, permits, right-of-way solutions, feasibility, the survey mapping, permitting strategy, you name it. We pretty much cover all of it in E&P.
And then obviously midstream, we're talking gathering systems and pipelines. Are y'all doing large transmission, or are you trying to stick more with, I always break up pipelines into kind of two categories. You have the pipelines that everyone hears about in the news, and then you have all the other stuff, which is done, the small gathering stuff that no one talks about.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's great that you break it up into two categories, but yes, we do both. So we will do, gathering systems and small pipeline, but we also do, the large 140-mile-foot pipelines, as well.
Right. So let's just kind of hone in there for a second. What do you guys see when you're out there, if you deal with oil and gas companies in the midstream sector, depending on what company you're talking to, some companies would argue that, the gathering stuff is tougher because the deadlines are changing, the targets are moving. Some companies would argue that the long pipelines, like an EPIC pipeline maybe or something like that, is tougher because of all the demands that go into that. How do you guys balance that as a company and say, the solutions aren't exactly the same and they have their own unique problems. So how do you guys balance, from a talent standpoint and a project management standpoint, those various problems that you come across?
Yeah, no, great question. So for us, we divide it into two different sections. We have the E&P group and we have the midstream group. And really, we hire the experts in the industry to focus on each. That way, no matter if you come to us and say, hey, you want the gathering system or you want the long linear pipelines, we have people who have experience in that. That way, we're not throwing somebody who's only ever done, gathering systems into a 300-mile pipeline, and they aren't, ready for what's coming into that.
Right. Yeah, they do have their own unique, milestones and markers, and it's really kind of hard to say, just from the outside looking in and look at this, which one is exactly more complicated. It depends on, back in the Haynesville Shell days, when things were changing 5 million times a day, it felt like it seemed like that couldn't be harder. But you do come across these long linear projects where you have permits that have to be done and, access to stuff like that. Do you guys, you said that I know you're engineering and consulting. How much does project management, like the PMP certification or that kind of mindset come into managing these type projects?
Yeah, great question. For us, we're really big on training up our individuals. So our senior vice presidents, our owners, our senior project managers, they're the guys, that started at the bottom. They put in their years, they put in their effort and slowly worked their way up promotion after promotion. And so when they get to that project manager standpoint, we'll of course train them on what that looks like, because of course it is different, but they know, and the decisions that they make, they know exactly how it's going to affect the people below them, because we don't want somebody who, all they've ever done is project management and they don't know how it's going to affect, the guy who's down at the bottom, the survey crew, who's out in the field. We want our guys to know how it's going to affect, when they make a decision, how it's going to affect the survey crews all the way through, all the way up.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you mentioned that you guys can have a wide range of offices. I'm assuming you cover all the major oil and gas shale plays. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk your talent acquisition. This is something I've seen back when the Marcellus and the Utica kind of was coming on the scenes. I know there was a lot of people, I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but they were struggling to find talent for that part of the country because there wasn't a lot of oil and gas experience. You might have had some good land surveyors or some good engineers or some good right-of-way agents or some good welders, but they weren't used to kind of our industry, kind of how we like things done. Being in the talent acquisition part of the business, how do you guys look at that? Because you got to recruit and you got to bring and you got to persuade. And so how does that go into the mindset of whether you're going to go into a new area, if you will?
Yeah. So for us, when we look at it, I find a lot of guys who have the experience, only in pipelines. And then I find the guys who have the experience pretty much doing everything else. And we find that there's two different mentalities with the two. The pipeline guys, they're going to take off and they're going to go work the project. And when they're done with the project, they're probably going to leave and they're, going to go on to the next company, whatever, company that may be. But they're very project specific and they don't usually stay very long. And then on the flip side, on the land development, on the energy and distribution side, these guys, they usually stick around. They're with the company and they say, hey, this is where I am. This is what I do. I don't really want to make a move. I'm happy where I'm at. And so it's just two different mentalities when you're looking at the two, I guess, industries really.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard if you're so used to being in oil and gas like we are, you kind of forget that this pace is kind of unique and that you're sitting there, the pace is unique and the recruiting's unique and the coming and going's unique and all this stuff's unique, but it really is when you look at other industries. It's sometimes it can be difficult to persuade people to come into our industry, and likewise, when you're in our industry and you look to leave, you don't realize that maybe the world operates a little slower than what we're used to.
Yeah, definitely. I find that usually the guys who have been in and around oil and gas, whether it's in survey or construction management for a pipeline, if they're in our industry or they've been around our industry, they know what they're getting into. If you've never worked in the industry, you're not quite ready until you're there. It is extremely fast paced and that not everybody's ready for that.
Right. I'm curious, just sticking with the talent acquisition kind of mindset here. When you see these plays coming and going, there's a lot of talk after the last downturn of people leaving the industry, some reluctance to get back in. You're talking about staffing up for a large capital type project that could last, a year or two. Are you guys still finding that's a hard sell to convince people to maybe come back and say, you know what, things are here to stay at least for now?
The guys that have been in the industry for 10 years at minimum, they understand it. It's a fickle industry, but they also know that oil and gas has never been stronger. And so I'm really not finding, much struggle on the talent acquisition side as far as getting people to come. Usually, there was a small downturn there, but it has never been more stable than it is now.
Right. Let's change focus here. Let's stick with the kind of nationalistic approach, but let's talk about regional. One of the things I'd like to ask the guests that have come on is, what are some of the things that you guys might see that if you don't advise a client early on, they might seem like a small deal, but as you go through the process of the project, next thing you know, you wake up one morning and you have a major conflict because you didn't resolve this. So I'd like you to answer that in two parts. Is there some general things, and then are there some things that are area specific that you guys have come across, maybe in the Permian or the Eagle Ford or the Bakken or wherever, that you go, you know what, in the Bakken we have to worry about this, but in the Eagle Ford, that's not the concern. This is the concern.
Yeah, and I think the number one answer that comes to my mind is the per diem rate. You get some companies that come in and they're not used to paying per diem. They just want the local guys to come in and work, and they just want to pay them. And then you get the oil and gas guys who are used to making per diem, and they're like, well, I'm not going to come work for you because y'all don't pay per diem. And so the client, we have to explain, hey, you've got to pay per diem. That's pretty much where the whole industry as a whole is moving to a standard, is you're going to pay per diem on a project. That's just the norm at this point. And of course, having the ability to vary that per diem rate is crucial, because you go out to Midland and West Texas, and that per diem rate is going to be a whole lot higher than it is down in Karnes City. It's just how it works, but that's because that's where the work is, and it's extremely expensive to be out there, and we've got to compensate these guys for the work that they're putting in out there.
No, that's a great point. I want to focus on that for a second, because you're exactly right there. The per diem rate on some levels is the lifeblood of the service side of the industry. You talk about getting people, taking them away from home for months on end, or maybe years on end, or whatever the case may be, having per diem. And it's interesting because I'm sympathetic to the client saying, well, good gosh, this is going to cost me, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to pay this per diem. However, one of the things that I've noticed in the industry is sometimes we talk about getting things done, fast. But when you look at compensation, sometimes compensation is a big thing, sometimes it's a small thing, but that per diem issues, that seems to be like the one thing that's always contested, by more companies, at least you would see. And for me, I look at it and go, you know what, guys, at the end of the day, you could pay this per diem rate and you could get the pipeline in service on time, or you could not pay it. The talent that you can bring in isn't as competent, and you might miss your in-service date, and that's probably going to cost you a lot more money than the per diem rate would have cost you.
Yeah, definitely. That per diem rate, it's crucial. And I think for guys who are transitioning out of our industry and moving, whether they want to move into land development, construction staking, okay, great. But you got to know that side of the industry doesn't pay per diem.
Right.
And you get guys that they're leaving oil and gas because of, the downturn, like we talked about, where, hey, the industry's down and I'm struggling to find work. Okay, great. And then they want to go, still use their survey skills or, whatever in another, section of the industry. And they get there, and the pay difference for them on an annual basis is so drastically different because there's no per diem and they're not used to it, that, it's a shock, and immediately they want to get back into the industry.
No, you're 100% right. And, when you see people that leave the industry, they don't come back. It seems like those people are usually the ones that leave in a downturn, and it was just so rough on them that they had to figure out how to live a different lifestyle without the per diem. And then when they get adjusted to that, they're like, you know what, I can't go back to that because it was so painful to transition off of a per diem type lifestyle to a regular lifestyle.
Well, I mean, you look at the guys who are out in West Texas, I want to say like the average per diem out there is, like 175. When you look at that, that's an extra 60 grand a year, and that's a huge difference, compared to not making 60 grand a year. If you had to change your lifestyle down 60,000 plus a year, that's a huge drastic difference. And a lot of people don't realize that it's just that much of a difference.
No, exactly. One of the things I see here on your website, which we'll link to in the show notes, which is atwell-group.com. We'll link to it in the show notes so listeners can check it out. Did you talk a little bit about permitting, especially at the state and federal level? Sometimes those permits can sneak up on you. Sometimes you have government shutdowns. In your guys' experience, how do you work through that process of making sure that you are providing a good, clean permit, researching all the statutes? Are you guys, do you have a full permitting team in-house, or are you outsourcing that, or partnering maybe with the company? How do you guys walk through that process?
Yeah. So we handle all of that in-house. Depending on where we are and what the project looks like, we can, give you somebody specific, hey, this is going to be your point of contact 100% of the time. Other times it's, hey, it's a smaller project. It's not going to last as long. It's just, we need this real quick done, and, then we'll move on. We can get it done without issue. But yeah, that is a huge portion of the industry, on that pipeline section is permitting and making sure that they're done properly and all the research behind it, so that you do, like you said, get a clean permit and you're ready to go.
Okay. All right. We'll start to put it into final descent mode, if you will. Let's talk a little bit more about you guys' company. You mentioned your offices. Just kind of talk about, maybe you're a talent acquisition person, so if you have some listeners who are in the business looking for a job, maybe some reasons they would want to consider Atwell. And then the flip side is, we have some folks on the industry side who are listening, maybe some reasons they would want to bring you guys in as a consultant or an engineer or a land surveyor.
Yeah, of course. So on the talent acquisition side, honestly, I can't, speak highly enough of our company and who we are and how we operate. Everybody from, our CEO down to our entry level, field survey trainee guy, just graduated high school and doesn't have any experience and is wanting to learn. We're all on the same team. And I think, that speaks volumes to joining that team. Our CEO a couple weeks ago, he was, out doing design work because we had a project deadline and we had some people who left, and, okay, great. We're still going to meet that deadline. And it doesn't matter if our CEO is going to have to do it or if, somebody else is going to have to do it. We're going to meet that deadline. And that speaks volumes to the type of leadership, that we have as a company. And then on the flip side, working, with potential clients, we offer turnkey services. And that's crucial, I think, is being able to say, hey, no matter where you are or what you do, we've got an office that's relatively close, and we've got the professionals and the know-how to, you tell us what you want and we'll get it done. Whether you need the survey right away, whether you need the engineering side, or, you want the construction management side, we've got it and we can get it taken care of no matter what. It's honestly, it's like a one-stop shop for everybody all the way through.
Okay, great. And if they want to find out more, obviously we're going to link to the website, but, is there, connect with you on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, Twitter? Where would you want to send people to? Connect
with myself personally. Our LinkedIn page is extremely active. The guys that monitor that page are, they're always on and always willing to talk. And I know anybody from our company, they're always willing to connect with people and, at least talk and, see what people are looking for.
Okay, great. We'll be sure to link that up in the show notes. Again, that's atwell-group.com. Atwell is spelled A-T-W-E-L-L. So we'll link to that in the show notes. Chris, anything else before we get you out of here today? I really enjoyed the discussion. But anything we omitted or skipped over that you want to circle around and bring back up?
No, sir. I think, we hit it all. Talked a little bit about industry and what we do in the industry, and then, talked a little bit about the talent acquisition side and bringing people on and what that looks like. And I think that was a great conversation, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris. And for the listeners, we'll talk to you next time.